Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of AI in Focus, where we bring you behind the scenes with ThoughtBot as we work on AI, both as a product and as part of our tooling. I am joined this week by Richard Newman. And where are our banners? I don't see our banners. Hard to say. In any case, you'll have to remember our names. Richard, welcome.
Hey, good to be back. And I'll do my best to remember my name. Thanks.
Excellent. So as we continue, we are working on ReadySetGo, our implementation of what it feels like to go through a ThoughtBot design sprint with an LLM at the helm. Last week, Steve Polito and I worked on caching to try to bring down the costs of the system. And we didn't get to the point of implementing it, but we got to the point of sort of demonstrating the kind of savings we would expect to see. I'm going to run the script that we did last week just for new viewers and as a quick reminder of where we got to. And then Richard and I are going to bring this into ReadySetGo proper so that we can reduce the costs of this tool. Richard, as you were not part of last week's episode, do you have any questions about what we're doing? Anything you think our viewers would like to know?
I have a sense of where we're going with it. Ultimately, a takeaway that I have is that in a lot of ways, this is an optimization sort of effort because we're trying to optimize the costs. And so one of the things that I was thinking about as you were just introducing that is as we get deeper into this with ReadySetGo, we'll want to kind of understand where we draw that line because you can keep optimizing until you get past a point that it's actually helping you a lot. So as we're walking through the tests, we'll want to keep that in mind.
For sure, for sure. Also, I sort of found it funny that I actually got an email from Anthropic saying, hey, you're not using caching. And I'm like, wow, they want us to spend less money? Like this was a real surprise to me. So I'm guessing it must have some kind of impact on them as well, where they're like, if you cache it, that must help the overall process. Yes, you pay less, but I'm betting it also like takes up less demand on their side. So
yeah, it probably has some onward sort of benefits, reduces the overall energy that they use and so forth. So
yeah,
it's like a lot of things, probably better in the long term.
okay, yeah. All right. Also, I think I found the switch.
There you go. Nice. There you go.
All right.
Did you ask Claude?
I did not.
Oh,
I clicked on things for a while until I found where it was.
there you go.
Okay. Let's see. Before we go into last week's changes and caching, let me do a quick sharing of where we've gotten to outside of that since last week. So let me bring my screen in here. So one of the things that past viewers might have noted or might remember is that between Ruby LLM and Anthropic, there's a situation where when the agent makes a tool call, if that gets interrupted by another message and like the result isn't right after it, it puts the chat into a state where it is just not recoverable and all future messages are just blocked. It's just like, yep, can't help you. So the chat at that point is essentially dead. So Chad did a lot of work to try to fix that situation and catch it, preventing multiple message sends by the user, using halting when we do the offer choices tool. And then we've also had then a couple other improvements, including sprint time estimates, moving trackers. But really most of the work was around around reliability of the chat and making sure that it lasts. So that's our changes. And we're going to come back to this with our sprint. But first, let's take a look at our chat here. So I'm going to clear this. We're using our actual instructions to make this a meaningful test. So for now, let's see. This is the script we're working with. First, let's just see what happens, and then we'll talk through what we're doing. So I'm going to go in here, and we're just going to add a line here. We'll just change this. We need to change the thumbprint of what that message is. So if we run our caching demo script, what it's going to do is just say, here's the system prompt. And again, we're using our real system prompts so that it's significant. We're going to ask it 3 questions and evaluate the costs and look at the caching that happens if you don't do anything. And the answer is there's nothing. There's no caching that happens. So let's take a look at that. Cool. So we see here, this is our input, which is like the size of what was passed along. This is the write cache, the read cache, the output generated from asking that question. And so what we see is there's no caching happening at all. The input steadily grows because each time we're adding the previous question and the answers to that. And so that is getting larger and larger as the context grows. And we can see just doing that with 3 simple questions, which were, if we bring up this, like, what's the point of the kickoff step? What should I do if the motivation is thin? And what are the output? Like, these are very simple questions that are not like a lot. You wouldn't expect even a lot for that to process, but that system prompt is huge. And so we see even just those 3 questions cost us 8.5 cents. And again, I'm pretty sure we're using we're not using a frontier model. I think we're doing Sonnet here. If we actually take a quick look, if we do chat.last.model, chat.last, let's see. Sorry, chat.last. And if we look at, I think we can just chain then model off of that. Yeah, we're using Sonnet 4.6. So a fairly affordable model. But still, that conversation cost us 8 cents. All right, so now let's run it again. And we're going to run it with the cache turned on. And so we're going to see here 2 levels of improvement, because the first time it's still not cached. So we are going to see the cost reduction in the follow-up messages. So now it actually read from cache because I think this might be a little bit flawed, but I do believe it is still less to like write to the cache. And I think it also recognized that we have actually sent this message before, but we have a write cache cost here and then our read. Actually, the more I think about that might be totally wrong. I think it's just like the cost of writing the cache is like cheaper. So we see a write, we see 2 reads, and our overall cost is now down to 4 cents. And then the real savings come in when we run it again. Where now we'll see all 3 calls have a cache read value of 82.88. And our cost is now down to just under 1.5 cents. So from 8 cents, 3 simple questions, like that was a pretty significant reduction. Now, of course, as the conversation goes along, the cost of that one system prompt is going to be a smaller and smaller portion of the total. But at the same time, this is free money. There's no reason to send it over and over again. So we're going to be like, let's take that step and see where it goes. And then I think the important thing to remember is it is a fingerprinted message. So like any small change invalidates the cache and makes Anthropic like reprocess the whole thing. So if your system prompt is at all dynamic, then it will only be beneficial across one user. So like, I don't know, let's say our system prompt said, hey, the person you're talking to is Lewis at Thoughtbot, and hey, the person you're talking to is Lewis at Richard, then I would get the benefits in my chat as I talk more because that my email wouldn't change. When Richard fires up his chat, he would be doing a new cache write and then cache reads on subsequent messages because his says Richard at Thoughtbot. But the really cool thing is that if that message doesn't change across users, then it's only the first user that pays for the write, and every subsequent user gets the cached version. So across chats, across experiences, the cost of that becomes 0 for that message, which was a really exciting thing that we found last week. It's not just caching on my thread, on my chat. It's saying, oh, I've seen this before. It doesn't matter where it came from. I've already like processed this. So I've been talking for a lot. Richard, what do you think of all this so far?
It's really interesting that it goes across the experiences, and this is something I want to get familiar with. Could you bring up the script again?
Yeah. Let's take a look at it.
I kind of want to appreciate what you're talking about there. So in this particular case, you've got 3 different lines in the questions array. Is it the case that all of those should stay static to get the benefit, or is it more the case that you can change later ones and the former ones will stay cached?
No, these won't make these don't make any difference at all. It is the system prompt, just that first message in the chat, that is getting marked as cacheable.
Excellent. Okay.
So we could, and I think the thing to remember is, I'm sorry, let me back this up. If these questions were static, then yes, we would want to cache those as well. Like if we had a set experience where when a user starts a sprint, and again, let's back up here to just see, like, when you actually start a sprint in ReadySetGo, this doesn't change. This message is added from the beginning, and it's hard coded. And so this message we could cache. But as you go through the sprint, every other question that the agent asks you is going to be different. So there is likely zero benefit to trying to cache those follow-up messages. But anytime you have any kind of static text, you want to cache that. So in our script, since these are static, like, we could explore, like, out of curiosity, to see, well, if we cache these too, do we get even more benefits? But for now, all we're caching is, so, and again, this is just saying, to make our script flexible, if the user passes the word cache along, then what we do is we call Ruby LLM's content, and we say we want to create a new content with system prompt and cache true. And I think that equivalent, that is the equivalent of, if we bring this up, tracking, caching. I'm looking for a specific thing. Here we go, anthropic prompt caching. So as they point out here, when you pass cache true along, it's shorthand for cache control type ephemeral. And you can also pass the amount of time that it is cached. So that's something we'll probably also look at coming back to our script. So we're just saying cache true. Again, I think the default is 5 minutes for this. And then we create the message in the chat, and we pass along the block value for the message that was cached. And if we're not caching, then we just say, hey, here's your system prompt. And so then for each of our 3 questions here, we ask the agent the question, and then here we're just doing our output, and then we're showing the costs of each of those. We're not doing anything with the response. We're just showing, here's how much that ask cost us. Cool. So that's that.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so since last week, we added a few changes. So we don't have this implemented yet, but I had written the tests for the implementation. And here's what we've added. So when calling, let's pull up our chat model for a second here. Not here. I see. We're not actively. I need to think through this. So we are in our spec, when the with instructions method is called, which is like a native Ruby LLM call, we're checking to see if it was added with that cache control marker. So I think essentially what we have is just, let me see. Let me look at our agent. Let's take a look at kickoff agent. So when we tell it instructions, that is like the macro for with instructions. And then because we don't tell it what it is, that's actually pulling from an instructions.text.erb. which are, these are its specific instructions. And those instructions include the main sprint instructions in it. So the chain of command is we define an agent. The agent says use instructions. The instructions by convention pulls from this file, app prompts, matching agent name. We tell it pull in additional instructions because we want to keep those the same across all the steps of a sprint. And then when chat ask happens, I think that is in our chat response job. So when we do grabbing the right agent dot ask, then that happens with instructions. And ideally, if we get all this to work, then when that with instructions is called under the hood, that message will have been sent with cache control turned on. So this was one. This is one test, and right now, of course, it fails because we don't have anything for it. The second thing I added since last week was a new it behaves like block of shared examples. So we're going to be adding these to all our agents. We should have, I think, 10 in all, one for each step of the sprint. And so if we look at that shared examples, that cached agent sends its system prompt with the cache control marker. So we create a chat, we start it out, we ask it a meaningless question, and then we expect that last message to have the ephemeral marker on it. Richard and I were talking right before going on stream whether does it make sense to keep this one like as this individual thing. For now, yes, is what we decided, but we might decide that we don't need this later. But anyway, those are all the changes. So with that in mind, I'm going to bring in our friend Claude here, and let's see what approaches it takes to implementing it. So we are on our caching based off main, our work from last week through here with Steve, and then here is where I added the failing specs. We'll just do a quick test that that is all that's failing. Just to make sure we didn't break anything else. Cool. So we had our chat spec fails, and the kickoff agent is not behaving like a cached agent because it's also not ephemeral. And those were our two failures. I didn't run the system test because those failed, but just to double check, we'll run them manually. And then while that's running that, we've queued up a message here telling it we're going to keep that chat spec for now. And let's take a shot at implementing chat with instructions using caching. And our system test is passed. Cool. So we only have our two failures. Of course, if we look at kickoff agent spec, for all of these that are part of the sprint, we're going to add that it behaves like a cached agent. So realistically, we have like 10 failures right now for each agent. All right. While it's doing that, we'll just take a quick look back over here. So these are the agents that we have, one for each step of the sprint. We have our kickoff, customer focus, problem statement, etc. So I'm actually going to just grab these first two and just add that shared expectation, just because I want to see like if we fix it in one, does it automatically fix everywhere, or do we have to do something? So let's just add it to those two as well. So customer focus. Let's grab that line. And we'll add that to customer focus and then problem statement. I think that is the one. Cool. And sorry.
Did you change the S or the agent class on that line? There it is.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So that one and customer. Okay. So now let's run our tests. And now we would expect to see 4 failures. Is it trying to lint? It looks like it's trying to lint. And, oh, I wonder if it's because it literally made the change. Okay, yeah. So for the moment, just to see, let's read what it did, then let's look at what it did. So it's saying chat with instructions now caches the system prompt via super, and a new method, adding the ephemeral content raw marker. Message is reset to clear the stale association. That's interesting to me. Both the kickoff, shared example, and the chat spec pass. Open items. That's the thing where we're like, do we need chat spec? We're going to ignore that for now. Rollout of it behaves to the other agent specs. And then reminder to revisit caching demos, standalone run issue later. Oh, right. That we were talking about, like, do we want to have to run it with bin Rails runner, or can we like just make us able to execute the script? Okay, cool. So let's look at those changes. And honestly, before we do, I want to. All right, we're going to discard that because that was just for demonstrating. I'm going to stash off this change for a second because I want to see all the changes fail. Just want to stash this one, make sure. Okay, so now if we run our tests again.
I know it was kind of a race against the AI there, wasn't it?
One more time. Yeah, that was kind of funny. It was like, wait, why don't we have 4 failures here? There we go. Cool.
Cool.
Awesome. So behaves like a cached agent, customer focus agent, and kickoff agent. Fantastic.
So,
all right. Yeah.
I want to ask you something before we go further with it.
Oh, sure.
Because this is an optimization problem.
Yes.
And because your benefit will vary, perhaps in each agent. I could imagine wanting, probably in our shared example, a way to tell that somehow running a subsequent one did result in some sort of saving, like the caching was worth it, adding the extra complication to it. That kind of, because right now our only signal is that caching existed, that it was turned on.
Yes,
we don't necessarily know if it is helping us,
right,
or if it's somehow changing other behavior.
Yeah. Keep going. I like where you're going.
It's kind of an integration system sort of level, so it's at a different point usually than the unit, although you can probably pick it up here at this, what we're doing with the agent. So just thinking about how we might construct it, what's worth actually paying attention to now, because at the moment, as we implement this, the AI has already got a solution for us, and we're going to look at that, and we're going to be able to tell that it turned the caching on. That'll be great. The test will tell us that we've done that faithfully. What it won't yet tell us, though, as we go further, is, are we getting a benefit out of it, or is the benefit what we're hoping from the effort? Because if you're asked to go ahead and try to, you're going through all of this because we're, presumably hoping to save quite a bit as we approach, zero on that. You kind of want to see what that might look like, or at least know if it was working and now it's not later on, like, there was something that did insert something dynamic into the message, and suddenly your savings have disappeared.
Right.
It would be good to have something like that to catch that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's actually okay. That's really great, right? Because just to restate it to make sure I understand, we've proven in our script that it saves money. And the way we did that was by looking at the costs and looking at the cache read write values and seeing that, oh, look, something is happening. So we have like two sets of confirmations that this made a difference, which is both look, their cash values and our costs went down. But now when we're bringing it into ReadySetGo, we're just saying like, did somebody turn on caching? And the answer presumably is yes, once we get our tests passing. But now we have nothing around the actual cost. So while we would have some anecdotal data, like, hey, our costs look different this month, there's nothing like really monitoring it, right? So, right, if someone does something as innocent as, you know, in the instructions, right? Like what we were saying, like in the kickoff agent, if we're like, you know, essentially somehow bring in here some other variable, some randomness, you know, even a like, you know, today is kind of message to be like, let's give the agent context about the date and time, right? That feels pretty innocent to introduce. But now this whole message is not like, it's going to be cached and never valid again because the time is different.
Yeah,
I like it. All right, so let's see if that's possible. So let's see. So for the moment, I've stashed those changes. Can we try a simple, I don't know, proof of concept test that, I don't know, exercises the values, I don't know, the cache, right? And what were they? Cache, is it cache RD? RD values in a test, and maybe chat.cost.total. So that, let's even give it that example, so that if someone makes the system prompt dynamic, say by adding the current time, we can see that caching is on, but the message isn't cacheable because it always changes. Okay, let's see where it goes with that.
Interesting too to see if we have a issue with having to mock something, or if we're like left with having to reach out to Anthropic on every test. That could be challenging.
Yeah, and then our test suite would cost money.
Yeah, that's right. Any savings we had from the caching's disappeared because now we're testing the caching. that probably isn't what we want.
So far, I'll say stubbing has worked well in terms of like having the agent actually act like an agent when we give it an answer. So like if we stub a tool call in the response from Anthropic, then the agent follows those instructions and tries to execute a tool call. So wow, it's really going off here. So cost, just so we know, cost is determined not by a report from Anthropic when we do chat.cost.total here. It is pulling from, let's go back into the Rails console. I'll just keep this open, see if it comes to an answer. Right, so when we do chat.last.cost.total, we get a value. If we just look at chat.last.cost, then we see the costs for each one, which is kind of cool. So like it's actually a breakdown of what we sent, what came back, and then the cost of reading and writing to the cache. But then fundamentally what that's based on is if we look at the model we're using, part of the metadata of that particular model is the cost per, I guess, think per million tokens. So, so that is actually being calculated. Sorry, here in this pricing is what I wanted to highlight. So
you also have the cache statistics as well, and the metadata in there, also in the pricing.
Yes. So what I wanted to sort of like to bring it together, it's like we're not mocking this part. It is calculating, look, if you sent this many tokens and this many were cached and this was writing, and this was reading, and these weren't cached at all, and you're using this model, and I know the costs per token, that this is the cost then that you should expect. Now, obviously, these values can get out of date if we don't update them. So it's not like 100% accurate, especially if Anthropic is tweaking, but it does mean that the agent itself, or at least, I'm sorry, the Ruby LLM infrastructure can calculate this value for us. So, wow, this is really, really okay. Like, why is that taking so long? All right, let's see what it says on this matter. It blocks the real Anthropic and cache read write are values a real API computes. A normal stub can't exercise them. So for a POC, I'll make the stub emulate it. If it keys on the system block bytes, returns a cache write the first time it sees a prefix in a cache read, that lets the test observe the exact behavior and show that a timestamp prompt never gets a read. Let me write it and run it. Okay, this is interesting. So it's saying a static prompt writes 500 and then reads 0. So it writes the first time and then reads the second time. And then a timestamped one, caching is on. Every request, right, carries the marker and pays a write, but because the prefix bytes change, it never gets a read. The silent cache buster. So it is pointing out that we are emulating their cache, and then it's setting the cache system prompt directly. Okay, let's take a look at what it did. I think only there can we evaluate, is this gonna help us, and is it worth whatever complexity it added?
Well, it added lines at least.
What's that?
I said it definitely added lines.
All right, so it's adding this caching LLM. We're stubbing a request, and we're stubbing. I see. So it is making up this part now. And then it's adding this cached system prompt. It is a lot.
Well, I'm also worried it's just a more elaborate way of telling if caching's turned on.
Yeah. So what if what if instead of doing this approach, we just had it write tests that prompt is deterministic? So I don't know, like we're reaching a little bit here, but basically, if you change the user, is it the same? If you change the time, like you travel forward 97 seconds, is it a new prompt? And just check for that instead. It's a little, maybe like a softer check, but at least we're not then testing that. It's like we're not then testing that caching works. We're making sure that we don't violate what we need for caching to work.
Yeah. No, that makes sense as a proxy. Can you go back up to the JSON that it mocked?
Yeah, sure.
I'm just trying to understand. Yeah, so it's kind of locked in the sequence. So it is really just more of an elaborate. It's supposed to give you a reduced number, so it gives you a reduced number kind of thing. I was trying to see, because it did give back the expected answer in both the it changed and didn't change. I was trying to see if it would, why that was so, but at any rate, I think if nothing else, doing what you suggested, even if this was a valid test, is still a worthwhile test for one reason. It's reasonably quick. I mean, some of these things that we do as system tests and what have you can start getting expensive, just the time it takes to run them.
Right.
So what you're suggesting actually could be pretty quick to do.
All right, let's give it a whirl. I'm going to save this off because it's still like interesting to me.
Yeah.
I might even want to like look at it later and like poke at it some more. This is prompt caching POC spec. We'll save that off. Also, I want to go ahead and commit this. I don't know. This is begin adding shared examples to all agents. Do I have, I think from our last time, do I have a co-author shortcut for you? I do. Whoop, there you are. All right.
Mhm.
Awesome. So customer focus, problems. Okay. Awesome. Let's do that. So that's not hanging out. All right. Back to Claude, back to code here. That was great. Let's say put a bit too heavy. I've stashed that off. Let's add a shared example, shared, I don't know, to our cached agents spec. That, let's see, does, let's say that only verifies that the text of the system prompt didn't change. So we try changing users. So let's see. So we generate the prompt for different users and for the same user at different times. And maybe that could be a starting point.
Yeah.
And at least gives us something.
Yeah, and as we go forward and get it implemented, we can keep working with that. That's not uncommon with load and optimization sorts of scenarios where you just kind of have to keep eating at the how will you know it's working to do
Yeah.
what you want.
So this is basically like make sure prompts are not dynamic so that when caching is on, there's an unchanging thing to cache.
As a small aside, at the risk of taking us down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
It was interesting at RubyConf last week in Las Vegas that the conversation about how do you set boundaries, how do you set the pieces that help you recognize that what you're asking your agent to do or what you're asking to be done in the code is met, so that you can pay attention to what it is you're trying to accomplish more than what the specific code change was that led to it. And this sort of test, where we're going with it, is recognizing that the cache or the system prompt didn't change, recognizing that we're saving the cost, is closer to that sort of boundary that you can kind of hand off and go, Claude, you might solve this one way or another way.
Yeah.
But however you solve it, I know that you're making sure we get the benefit from that change that we're expecting to see from that. And being able to articulate what those boundaries are, being able to articulate what it is you're actually trying to accomplish as a outcome, that becomes more important. And
you mean like
how you're thinking
articulate
about
it
the
like
test.
in the prompt?
Yeah, and how you're constructing the tests, right? So we're going out of our way to come up with tests that actually prove not just the caching's there, but that we're somehow getting a benefit, right? And so the better we articulate that in the test, the better that we can tell Claude, you can do whatever you want with the code, but it needs to meet this condition, right?
Okay.
And we're not at a place yet where we could quite do that with this, but what we're wrestling with here becomes just that much more important when you're working with an AI tool to develop your code.
Yeah. All right, it has answered us. Let's see. The two new stability examples pass. Proving the agent is identical. The one failure is the pre-existing cache control. Sure. So we've added 2 tests. If anyone adds something dynamic in the agent's prompt, they turn red. Yeah, that's fine. So now it's asking us. So let's take a look at that. So what we have is in our shared examples, and actually I'm just going to pull this up. Also, I would like to turn on nope. I was trying to turn on a display parameter, but that's fine. Let's take a look at what it added. So in our, okay, so I don't as much like comments explaining tests. I feel like the test description should explain it more. So we're going to play with that before we commit. So renders the same prompt for different users. So for the agent class, we create a chat, and then we expect the prompts to be the same. Renders it across time. So we create a chat. 1 year from now, I don't like that as much, because if I want it to be like the year, the month, the date, like everything, so that there's no chance of like, if the agent says it's May,
Yeah.
like that might or might not trigger that.
When you run on February 29th. Yeah.
Yeah. When we're ready for the caching fixes. For now, let's make that time change, I don't know, more varied. Maybe touching different parts of the time component. It is definitely being slow here. Yeah, so prompt that right, this is what I'm saying, right? A prompt that interpolated just the hour month would slip through. Let's pin both reads to specified date times that differ in every component. Okay, that's a little heavy, but I'm actually okay with this, I think, because it's only one test since we're doing shared examples. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Two things. One, I thought it was interesting. I avoided the 2032 time problem, but
what's the 2032 time
or
problem?
maybe I had the date wrong. But somewhere in the 2030s, we're going to have to deal with
Is this an
32-bit
epoch Linux
time
change?
Yeah. There's one of those time thresholds, like in the year 2000, that we'll have to cross.
Fun.
But, yeah. But at any rate, the only thought I have is just the readability of that. But I think it does what we want. So that part's fine. I like the absolute date part of it.
Okay, so we're good with that. I don't exactly like the setup in terms of like, this is a really long line to read.
Yeah, that was my objection too. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's do a couple things. So first of all, and I think that's all it added, and it has added this system prompt for agent helper also, which is it is doing that, but I feel like in our test helpers, never mind. I remember we have these in like, I don't know, stub LLM. We have a few helpers like this expect param. Also, if we look at our chat spec, like it is doing this. Yeah, actually, where does that one get defined? In stub LLM. Okay. All right. So let's tell it a couple of things. First, let's make the date time ones shorter. I don't know, use multiple lines rather than compressing. Let's find a good spot for the new helper. I don't know, look at existing helpers like finally, I don't know, remove the comments and use a test description to convey.
A brief test description.
Yeah. All right, let's see what we get from that.
A lot of times I'll tell it the line length I'm okay with.
Oh, sure.
Like, 80 or 100 or 120.
All right, so we're going to close that. We're going to close that. We'll look at our shared examples. It is
like on line 20, if I'm worried about human readability, I'd probably move the .2 onto the next line just because it breaks up the comparison a little bit more starkly. On the other ones, I'd probably do 2s underneath the travel 2 just because it lifts out the
also,
blocks more. We'll see what it does, though. I don't know that it would do either of those things.
I don't remember if this is chat will only ever have one system prompt. I forget if that's a definition on Anthropic or if it's, I think it's Anthropic. Against Anthropic, so we can use Sol in that helper. Okay, what do we have? It did things. Let's just look at the changes.
Oh, okay. That was one of them.
Okay, cool. So this feels way more readable. We have our chat. Not a fan of nested chats. Oh, I'm sorry, of nested creates, but for the sake of this, I think we can move forward. We can think about that later if we want to change it. It renders an identical system prompt regardless of the current date time. This looks great. I feel like that's much better, much more readable. And then it added this new that. So let's tell it that and have it change that. So I'm going to stage this one for now. And I expect this one to be like agent chat messages were role system dot sol dot content.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand why it thought a new module made sense.
Let's ask it that too. Cool. So if we look at our unstaged changes, it went to Sol. So, yep. Honestly, we could probably even just do messages dot first because that's all we're doing. But this is more generic. And in Rails helper, it added that. Okay. Any existing modules?
It's not, I don't know that I disagree with it. I just don't know what it was.
Sure.
What its reasoning was.
I mean, I think it's probably going to say like, well, you have expect param and its own thing. But maybe these two get combined as a thing. Oh boy. Why are you doing that?
Yeah, sometimes it will get anchored on consistency for the sake of consistency, which isn't always what you want.
That's exactly where system prompt for. Oh, so it did actually move it.
Mm-hmm.
Just added it to stub LLM. Okay, I'm happier with that now because later we could decide if we want to move these out.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yep.
So we are adding new shared example tests, make sure that the prompts are not dynamic, so that when caching is on, there's an unchanging message to cache. So we have, just by default, we're creating two chats, which creates two users, and expecting them to be the same. And that. So right now, they're gonna pass if we run it. And so what we want to do is see them fail. So also for the moment, because I want to just exercise this a little more cleanly, if we grab our chat spec, we're gonna skip this one. And in our shared examples, let's skip that. So now when we run the tests, we should just get 3 failures. Actually, I'm sorry. Now we should get no failures, just the skips. And then when we change one, cool. All right. So we have a green suite, but now let's change our message. So if we go into our instructions for kickoff agent, and it is important that for testing, we actually chop off most of the instructions so that test results don't have these giant prompt strings in like difference and expected tests. So we just need to be careful for our sake right now to make sure this doesn't fail. For now, let's prove that it fails by putting it here, but then actually we kind of want it to trigger with that being off. So we're going to stub a different environment to make sure that none of the messages dynamic. So for right now, let's just prove that it changes, and we'll just be like, I don't know, hello, and what do we have access to here?
Time.now.
I guess sure. Time.now. Let's just do time.now. I was trying to get one for the user. All right, so now if we run our test again, I would hope our kickoff agent test fails. Well, the longer you see green, the more nervous you feel.
I was thinking, we could have put an F on the one
sorry,
shared example one and
write it.
But you do get the sense of suspense this way.
There we go. Whew, and a little bit of relief. We get fear, we get some dopamine. It's all good.
Yeah,
cool.
It's a whole experience.
So we got that test failed. I have no idea actually how we might because this prompt doesn't have access to the user. Can you get to it through chat?
What is it that you're trying to accomplish?
I want to make the renders an identical system prompt for different users, which means to make this change, we have to do something.
So are you looking? So we could certainly change the actual user in the message if you want. So as you change that system prompt that's being used for the test, that instructions one,
Yep,
that is the live one. We've just
Yep.
disabled part of it during test.
Right.
So the more we're changing the production one to accommodate testing,
Right.
the more. There's a couple of things. Obviously, now we're having this own more the testing layer, and whoever's in here has to deal with that. On the other hand, we do want it to be what is used in production so that we can actually get a sense of it. So we have a couple of options here. One is
for that one I have a fix. For that one about the what's in test versus what in production. For that one I have an approach.
Well, let's do that. So
cool.
What are you thinking?
So to demonstrate that this is an issue, so we have our red test, but if we move this into here, our tests will be green again, and that's bad because we have a non-cached thing. It's just that our test environment is skipping it. So let me see where that was. Tool spec, maybe. This. Cool. So we see our test is passing, but we have a dynamic prompt. It's just that this gets excluded in test. So the way to fix that is in our shared agents in here. Sorry, we want this after our setup. Now this test should, oh, sorry, I have to run it as the shared thing. Now the test will be red again. It really should. Allow it
I
to
think it's
receive
where you
test.
put. I think it's where you put 31. I think it had to be ahead of 23.
Oh, because we already read. Oh, right. Sorry. It actually has to be at the very, very beginning because the chat will
Okay.
get. Yeah, I think it has to be there.
Yeah, it depends on whenever it's going to load the instructions.
Right. Thank you. My brain was starting to explode. I'm like, wait. Again, a little bit of fear, a little bit of anticipation, please. There it is. Oh, thank God. Okay. It waited till the very end. Did you see that? I was right there.
Yeah,
Look
yeah.
at that. It
It was
made me live
watching you.
through this many
Yeah,
dots.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's
Cool.
Friday. It wants to play too.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we have our fix for that. So in both this test and this test, we want to make sure we're like use the whole prompt for this test because this matters here, not just the fact that there is a prompt. I think this one is still fine because this is like don't care what the prompt is, it just should be sent with the marker. So we'll come back to that and check. In the meanwhile, we now have like we've now proved that this test will catch a time regression in our instructions.test. So if we pull this back out and we run the tests again, now we should be back to green. And the thing I wanted to try to exercise then was different users. So what were you going to say? Yeah.
If you want, you can put an F in front of it on 13 and 22 and only run those two tests if that's what you want to do. I mean, we could do the suspense thing. The suspense thing's fun, but
will it run it as a shared example?
it'll run it. Yeah, it'll do a focus on it.
So do I run the whole suite and then it'll only? Oh, very nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm a big mini test guy, so I feel like I learn new things about RSpec all the time. So thank you. Whew,
yeah.
That's much less stress.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So with that in mind, let's take the F off of this one because now we're good here. And how do we make this one fail? Like, I guess we could maybe just as a simple way, we could just put chat.id. Like, I'm not sure what access this has to anything.
I think if I'm following our intention, so our intention is, did our live instructions, our production instructions, change in such a way that caching won't work for us anymore?
Yes.
And for that purpose, we no longer want it to be a more efficient system prompt. And so we kind of want line 6 to not be involved. I think that disabling, that test environment as you did in both tests,
right,
is all we need to do, because now we're just checking to see if it varies by user or if it varies by time.
Right. I want to see. We haven't proved that varied by user does anything. Is the part I want to test. Like we haven't gotten this test to fail.
Okay, so that's now what we're worried about. Okay,
yes.
So then
close the other stuff.
We could, and it's a little bit of a. I'm just trying to think of, could we just jump something into the environment for the instructions to go ahead and ask and pull in, or is there some way that we can go ahead and just set a value and ask the instructions to do it? And that way we could do create user. Well, I guess we could just do create user here. We could just straight up do a
just like
factory bot create user.
You mean like here in the actual instructions?
Mm-hmm. If you just want to see a fail. Yeah.
I don't think we have access to like current user because that's like coming off the controller.
No, I meant factory bot dot create.
Yeah.
User.
We could do a build. Factory bot dot build user dot email. Let's see what that does.
It'd be interesting if nothing else.
Cool.
There you go.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. I love it. Yeah, again, just to prove that the test works. And again, we'll do one more, which is we'll take it out of here. We will temporarily turn off that. We'll come back to our instructions. We'll put it inside the test. Now our test should be incorrectly green. Just verify it is. And then if we enforce that, nope, you're not running in test, now we should fail again. And cool, we got our 2 racers. Awesome. So with that, get rid of that. That goes, excuse me, that goes away. It is yelling at me for something though. Is it just the X?
I would assume so.
Is that the only thing it's unhappy about?
Yeah, yeah, the focus,
Okay.
anything focus. Yep.
All right, so looking now at our changes. We have, we're doing all this. I'm actually inclined to, let's make one more tiny change, which is, let's put the new tests in a describe block with a before action to
to disable the test environment.
Yeah, just to make it,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, a little clearer. I feel like it's small enough that it's not like a mystery guest kind of thing here.
Yeah, I agree. I always go by, is it a screen full? If I have to scroll, then
yeah,
maybe it's a different answer.
So meanwhile, then this, we can discard that change. That was just temporary. And ooh, okay. It says must not use letter before, and I've got a memory of that preference. All right. I don't know. I think neither then.
Well, you're in a shared example, so you're already kind of separated things away from things.
A little bit.
I think this goes down to, it depends on what group you're with and, how far things go. Preference is not the same thing as never.
Okay.
So if we think in the context of being a shared example, which is already separated from, the actual thing under test when you're writing the specs.
Yeah.
And we think it aids usability in the particular situation rather than cluttering it with something that's a little more outside. And, we could even turn it into a context instead of a describe, just to make that even more apparent.
Sure.
I think you could make an argument to do it in this case and treat it as an exception to the standard preference.
Let's do it. Tell me again your thought there, context versus describe.
So context, usually I use to say, well, something about the overall environment or the situation is different between, other situations. In this case, one could argue, well, this is a test artifact. We haven't actually changed the context in which the live thing would run in, but it does kind of draw your attention to the idea of, oh, we're doing something a little different. This is going to be,
it's like a special group of tests that.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what it comes up with, and then we can decide if we want to switch it from describe to context. All right, so in our system prompt stability, not crazy about that, but we'll probably just change that manually. I'm gonna go ahead and stage this for now. Cool. All right, so what I would do is something like this.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, with that said, would you change that word to context?
Not now.
Okay.
Not with that writing.
Okay. And I'm just gonna sort it briefly here. Anyway, just daytimes users for different daytimes.
Part of my reasoning is when I use context, I usually think I can start the phrase if or when or of, something that kind of like, so the when in this case would be when it's the full system prompt, or when it's, a production level prompt or something.
Okay.
But we're not saying that in this case. So I think it's ancillary.
Okay. So let's go ahead and commit that. That
Just one,
was
go ahead.
the last thing I want to do is I want to move that stub LLM to be sorted. I like finding things alphabetically. And with that, let's commit it. So this is really interesting because I mean, like this was a pretty big like departure, but I think the importance of it is I'm so glad you brought it up because right, turning on caching and then having a dynamic prompt, you're just like you lost it. You're like, look at it, look at me, I'm doing caching, but you're not
Yeah.
behind the scenes. You just don't know it. So I think that was like a huge thing for us to like catch and think about and test for. Awesome. Now let's take a
And
look. Oh, go
before we
ahead.
go on, one more
Yeah.
note.
Yeah.
We talked about the fact that writing something that directly went out to Anthropic and tried to exercise it would, obviously be costly and so on and so forth. But you could imagine writing a tagged test that you would only run, say, once a day or
Mhm.
once a week or what have you, that actually did measure the cost so that you could
Yes.
actually tell how your system's performing. Now it's in the same vein as overall stress tests or performance tests or things like that, where you're actually trying to measure the context or the overall environment you're with, and don't
Yeah.
want to do that on every, you don't want to just insert it in your CI to run every time.
Right.
But there is that extra layer of protection so that you can confidently talk in the organization about, no, we could tell that, in fact, we're saving more money because of what we're doing things, or something's compromised it and maybe Anthropic changed their charges and now we can see that a little differently or what have you. Um,
Right. Right.
so there is a place for those live things, but you do have to control it really, really well so that you're not, overdoing it. Um,
Yeah, I could
so,
even see that being like almost like an admin route, like a health check kind of route that
hmm
we could log in
hmm
and just be like, for now, just manually run a health check on the system. We could automate it, of course, too.
sure.
But like, yeah, there's many places, and I think that's a really good thing, right? Because also, right, things could change out from under us, and we might not realize it unless we're also just like, is this happening in reality?
hmm hmm
Is what we're expecting like actually, yeah, continuing? Okay. With that said, let us now all right, run around the suite. We should have now 4 failures for the cache control, the 3 agents that we said to test for it, and the root chat spec. So here are our 4 failures. Cool. And now I'm gonna unstash the fix. I think it was that one. Yeah. Okay. So let's look at what it's doing. So it is saying that Access Chat rebuilds the LLM chat from database messages each turn and only reconstructs a cache block from content raw. So we let the gem persist the instruction and then add the ephemeral cache marker. And that matches what we saw last week, which is why, just as a quick aside, uh, and maybe a reflection back to last week, that's why this block in our test script looks like this instead of being like um, with instructions, a system prompt that was built with the cache. It was like this line here, like it had to be persisted with the cache on so that when it regenerates the chat, that, oh, this thing is cached comes with it every time instead of just passing it like here. I guess if we look at, um, and this is a really interesting a subtlety, but I thought it was really important. So like at our, when we first did it, right? Like this was our approach. So it's like, if we're caching, then create the prompt with the cache and then chat with instructions. And that seems reasonable, right? Like you're saying, I built, you're like, if I'm caching, I'm doing this prompt and I'm saying caching true. And then I'm like, hey, chat with the instructions, you know, use these instructions. But then what would happen is on the following message, when it would read it, that cache part wasn't persisted to the database. So that's why we actually manually create a system message here instead of saying with these instructions, because that way every time that conversation is read, that message is marked as chat. And after we like get this working, I kind of want to look at the Rails console and see this. Actually, you know what? We can actually look at that now. If the last thing we ran was with caching. Do we see? Hang on. Messages first. So here's the content raw block. Creation chat ID. I'm going to forward through all that. Created at, here we go. And so, right, so at the end of those instructions, it includes cache control type ephemeral. And so what my understanding is if you just said chat.ask some message with ephemeral, that wouldn't get persisted. Then so that's why we do it manually, which is why it's saying back over here. Hang on. Let's just restart Tower here. I think it lost the story. That's what it's talking about here. I don't know that we keep this here. I think we ended up putting it in the PR, but still. Oh no. Hang on. So it's calling super, we're caching the system prompt, and then it is returning self, and then our private method to cache it. Again, it is grabbing. It is grabbing. It's thinking there might be multiple system prompts, but we don't need that. And then there's this return unless that's going to be like, wait, I don't think we need that either. Like there is always a system prompt. And then it's saying for the block is that it's updating it with the raw value and it's resetting. Oh, I don't like this at all. It just feels like it is doing way too much.
When do we call with instructions inside of ReadySetGo?
We don't. It just gets called. It gets called as part of chat.ask. So we could see that if we like we just leave this up for right now. Let's close some other things.
Yeah, we're overriding the one that's in Ruby LLM at the moment.
Okay. Chat.last. Sorry, chat.messages.last. Cool. Okay. So if we do now chat.ask hi, I would kind of have expected that to go through with instructions. Let's see what happens if we do chat response job, perform now. Like fundamentally, that's just doing agent for chat.ask. Chat, and then text. Because like I would have expected this to fire, unless that only happens when you start a new chat. So let's try that next. So do we get any breakpoint? Nope. Okay. So let's do chat equals chat.new, and I think we need to give it an agent. Let's see what happens. Type equals blank. Required. I don't know. This might be a little bit of a rabbit hole trying to create this manually, but I want to briefly ask Claude about this. And second, I want to tell him I'm not happy. So first of all, so how can I most quickly trigger the debug statement I added to instructions? And then here, the fact that it's calling messages.reset, I would want to look that up on Ruby LLMs. While it's thinking there, I want to go to the repo. Batch messages, method messages. Oh, that's in their spec. Maybe we can just navigate our way through. Oh, it's going to be like in their acts as definition.
Yeah, depending on the timing of, or depending on the context of when with instructions gets invoked and where in the conversation, that can inform a lot about what we want to do in that other that helper the cache system prompt one. Because we can make certain assumptions, yeah, we can thin that down quite a bit.
All right, so it says bin Rails runner kickoff agent new chat.last. Okay, let's just try that and just see that we even get in here. Am
I reading that right?
Cool.
As soon as you do agent.new, it gets invoked. That implies it doesn't get invoked later on through the rest of the conversation.
Right. So I see. So when we do that, right? So here we are. So if we continue, we'll go through it. So then I don't want the single existing. So let's just take a look. So in chat response job, we're not doing. I see. We're not in our app generation. We're doing chat.step agent. All right, let's take a look at what. Okay, so chat.step agent pulls us through here. Okay, here we go. I see. So for the project, what's the current step? Call new on that, giving it its chat. So, okay, so every time we go through a new agent and we hit the chat response job, we call ask. I'm still surprised that calling the job didn't go through here. But in any case, we did see it come through, and we're a little bit short on time. All right, I just want to ask it. So I'm suspicious about messages.reset, and the overall approach feels heavy. Can you simplify your approach? Remember that there's only ever one system prompt, and you can trust that it's there. All right, let's see what it comes up with that. And again, we have this stashed, so we can come back and look at it.
I was just trying to think through the sequence of calls over time as I'm having the conversation, because you've got the live conversation while you're in that step working through it, but you also have times
Sure.
when you walk away and you come back to ready set go in a different session and so forth. So
I mean, even from message to message, like it should be going through like when you so you ask it answers and now it's sitting there. Like even that
mhm,
next time when you ask something, like chat response job, let's walk it through. Chat response job fires. So if we just do like see where that
mhm,
happens, it's going to be in the one of the controllers here. So if we look for right, so in our chats controller, in our create, the text is what you pass in the params, right? So we're hanging
mhm.
out here. You type in this, you hit enter. It's going to come through here, and assuming that there's text, then it's going to get the chat and then perform later with the text, and then come back to the chat path. So it's going to return us here. So, like as we do that, chat response job fires. We're in perform. There's not unanswered tool calls right now. So we do agent 4 and we ask the text. And agent 4 calls chat step agent, and chat step agent calls project step agent. And we can just like pull that up really fast.
It's the
Project
dot
step
net.
agent was that was it
It's
not
the
here?
dot new that like causes that all to start happening. The fact on 34 you have a dot new after step agent, right? It's that's probably causing with
That's sorry,
instructions getting invoked.
that's a property on the project, I believe, maybe.
Okay.
Am I wrong? Where where is project.step agent coming from? It's on so that's the spec. That's the spec. I remember I feel like I'm having oh, maybe it's one of those it's delegated maybe. It delegates
Prefix step. Yep. 12.
ah, got it. Right. Thank you. I'm like, why can't I find this? Cool. Right. So step agent gets dedicated or gets returned to current step. Current step is
Mhm.
where's current step?
But still, it's an agent, and we're calling
Step dot
dot new
find
on
the
it.
step name. Yeah, okay. So cool. Walking the tree back. Um, so response job calls ask calls step agent. This says, give me a new step agent based on the step we're currently on, passing it the chat. And so trigger that should trigger the debugging. Like the thing I was trying to understand is why when I did chat response job perform now, why didn't I hit that debug? I
Hmm.
still don't have an answer. But I also want to keep going, so I might have to dig through that one
Yeah.
later. Okay, it simplified things. Find the one system message, tag its content raw. I left your debugger. Great. The correctness hinges. That messages.find returns the same object instance that two LLMs rebuild reads. This is interesting. Okay, let's see what it looks like now, though. So cache system prompt is it finds it, then it's going to create a new block with that system message content. And then it's going to update it to add content raw block.value. I'm still, it still feels wrong to me because it's like when we first create it, it doesn't have anything to find unless, and maybe this is what you were talking about, like that when we look at an agent and we have this instructions macro here, like, I guess that happens. When does that interpolation from, instructions.text for it get pulled in such that this thing is actually finding it and updating it?
Yeah, my tendency, and we wouldn't have time to explore this, but my tendency would be when I'm faced with something like this and I'm not quite sure how, especially because we've got a gem involved and so forth, that
Yeah.
I'd probably just start dropping in, do some trace debugging sorts of things. I mean, you've got the
Yeah.
debugger, right? And that tells you when it breaks, but I could see dropping in a trace there and a tracing cache system prompt and a trace back on that step agent area. And just kind of like, if I can start picturing the call or the sequence
Yeah.
of calls, I
Yeah.
can start getting appreciation of what the overall flow is supposed to be. And then that might inform, okay, how do I want this? If I can trust certain things are always true and I get the cache system prompt, maybe I don't have to look up those things. And right now we're kind of having to take Claude's word for it. And our
Yeah.
only way, so we could take two paths there. We could either try to debug it ourselves, the way I just
Yeah.
talked about, or kind of what I was talking about before is there a way that we can be confident in a test or a boundary that just confirms that it's done at the right time and we get the benefit we want? In other words, do we have to go through the debugging? And so, you know, I always
Only
don't want to, but there is
I'm
that kind
hoping
of
for
question.
I'm hoping for a third option, which is that it looks less scary. And I say this only because, like, in today's Ready Set Go sync, we were talking
Mhm.
about how the work that we've done, going back to the beginning of our stream, the work that we've done to keep the chat from getting into an unrecoverable state has ended up feeling fragile. And
Uh-huh.
so, and it's like each little step didn't feel fragile, but now you've added all these things and now it does.
Right.
And so, like, when I'm seeing this code where we're playing with the messages
Mhm.
retroactively, like we're looking for a system message and adding the
Yep.
cache to it, it's like, why didn't we just create the first one that way initially?
Right.
So actually, I know we're a little bit over time, but I want to ask it that.
Well,
I don't know.
and before you do,
Yeah.
um, there's times that I'll just tell Claude, prove it, prove prove to me that this actually does it this way. And usually then it has to explain to me the
Yeah.
assumption it's making, and it has to, like, well, you got to trace it. You got to show me what's going on. Prove it to me. Make me comfortable with the situation. So, not suggesting we do that now, but
Sure, sure.
it is a path to try to, like, get Claude to help you through that.
Agreed. Aren't we setting the instructions once with the cache added?
Yeah, I agree with you. Anything retroactive like this is kind of like, huh? What are we doing?
And for me, 9 times out of 10, this comes back to maybe even more than that. Claude will write code that passes tests and that kind of
Hmm.
works. And it's still not the optimal, like, idea of how you should do a thing. And unless you push it and say no again, and sometimes explain what you want, it will create working solutions that don't look like headaches right now, but they do 6 months from now. Um, and so with all AI development, I'm like, it's super helpful to have an agent that does these things, and it's super important to, like, think about the code that you're adding. A gem limitation, not a preference. Uh, oh boy, along with instructions. So it's talking about the instructions. I literally don't want to read all that. so So we're using the instructions macro in the class definitions for the agents. Why not set the instructions there a little more manually? Why not set the instructions? I'm going to skim what it's saying.
I wonder if that macro
This is where it's talking about.
Do you think 15 takes a block?
It does. Yeah, like if we look, like, and we used to have that. It was just like a really helpful. We come back to agents. Right, like you could do that. You can give it a block. But then like one of the things we found that was really cool was let me see if it's on this page. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so default prompt. When you just say instructions, it looks for that.
I was just thinking at that point we could just have it go ahead and cache itself at that point.
Right, that's what I'm thinking. Like, why not? Why isn't it doing it there?
Yeah.
Let's see if it has an answer. The instructions only decides the value. It doesn't control how that is persisted. Caching is a persistence problem, right? It has to end up in the content raw column. And that, right, happens in that. So handling the macro cache block doesn't help. The same persist path still stringifies it, and it drops content raw. Okay. Setting it manually in the agent costs more. All right. I think we have to think through this some more.
Yeah.
And I definitely still don't like what it presented, but we are closer. And when we're all done with this, we have tests to cover it. So I think I want to call it. How about you, Richard? You good to call it?
I'm good. Yeah. Although I am interested in following up with you and see where we take this.
For sure. Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us this week. We are getting closer and closer to getting caching implemented. And just as you see, there's always a lot more than you think once you start digging. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week. Have a good one.